How in the world do you expect to surpass Batman Arkham Asylum? I'm sure the developers, when they were basically in the mode for making this game, they basically obviously asked themselves this question time and time again, I'm sure. And basically, when you look at it, when you look at some of the most successful sequels in video game history, there's kind of a pattern that shows up. You basically don't fix what isn't broken, and you basically build upon that and give people more. Make the game bigger, better, and just give people more of what made you successful in the first place, and add in a few things in there that actually match the rest of the formula. But as easy of a concept as that sounds, it's a little bit harder to execute when it comes to its level of in terms to its level of difficulty, because as mentioned before, it's one thing to have a concept and it's a whole other thing to make that concept come to light. So in this one, guys, we're going to be talking about Batman Arkham City, which is probably the overall greatest video game based off of a superhero franchise ever made. Although I will still say that Batman Arkham Asylum is the GOAT, simply because this game wouldn't have been what it was if it wasn't for Batman Arkham Asylum. And just like Batman Arkham Asylum, this game is definitely a pleasure to go back and to play. Just watching the game is fun, and playing it is even more fun. But if you were to, let's say if you were a guy and your girlfriend didn't mind you playing video games, and she just kind of enjoyed watching, I guarantee you, especially if she's aware of the character and knows about the character, she would absolutely have no problem watching you. As a matter of fact, she actually might get into the story and might get into how things work. And at the same time, she might actually help you out by saying, hey, maybe you should go here. You'll find something over there. I spotted something over there. Did you see that? So it's just one of those games that completely manages to suck you in, and it doesn't let go. From start to finish, the game just does not let go. It absolutely sucks you in, and you enjoy every single moment of it. Enjoying the better parts about being the Dark Knight, so to speak, right? Which is obviously something of a complete fantasy. But with that being said, it makes you feel like a badass. It makes you feel like Batman. It makes you feel like the Caped Crusader, the Dark Knight, whatever you want to call it. This is, in many ways, the definitive Batman experience because of the amount of variety that's in the game, and the fact that everything that was iterated in the previous game was refined and brought back even better, and made the game that much more fun to play. And it made you want to do the things that you did in the first game, but with the new setting and with the villains and everything like that, and with the story, and the fact that one of the main antagonists in the game, which there are many, but one of the main antagonists in the game knows your true identity. It kind of makes you think as the player playing, like, what's going to happen next? Is this person going to expose Batman? Could this be the final Batman? What's going to happen with the Joker? What about everything that happened previously? How did things turn up afterwards? So a lot of fans that would come up to play this game and that would pre-order it, and there were a lot, basically had high expectations, and rightfully so, because Rocksteady truly made a masterpiece the first time around. The first game was just so good that they had to make it better in every single way. Whatever they were going to bring back, they had to bring it back better. And then eventually what would end up happening is that they would be challenged greatly. But with that being said, they certainly nailed it out of the park. And when I went to the midnight release of Batman Arkham City, they even had these, I don't remember what the prizes were, but they even had these trivia questions, and to where if you would get one right, or if you got all of them right or something like that, you would win something. I don't know, maybe you win a copy of the game that would be free or something like that, but I didn't care. Either way, I was getting the game. But long story short, I actually got asked one of these, well, one of the questions I was asked, I actually raised my hand the fastest, and they actually called up on me, and I got it right. And the question was, what were Joker's first lines in Batman Arkham Asylum, which were also the first lines in the game, if you don't count the voiceover of the police intercom or whatnot. And it was, oh, stand back, I've got a bomb, or something like that. And of course I did the Joker laugh as well. But obviously I can't do that anywhere near as good as Mark Hamill, but basically I got it right. And I don't know if I got something for it. I don't know if it was like a keychain or something, or maybe I don't know, whatever it was, but I obviously missed, I think there were a few questions asked that that I just ended up missing. But I wish I can kind of go back and try to remember what those questions were. But ultimately, at the end of the day, from when we went to the Arkham City GameStop midnight release, I also remember seeing people that were dressed in costumes, and if they weren't dressed in costumes, there was something related to that release that people absolutely just got enthralled in. And the thing is, like, I also enjoyed watching other people out there that were around my age level, but there were also people that were older, and of course there were people that were younger, and there were even parents of kids with their kids bringing them to pick up the game, which was awesome. You saw basically everybody from let's say 10-year-olds to, not many 10-year-olds at that time of night, but with their parents, but there were a few. Like, you saw like 10-year-olds or whatnot, and then you saw a whole bunch of people that were either in high school or in college or slightly beyond that. And I was, how old was I at the time? My goodness, this was 2011, so this was 12 years ago. So I was 26 at the time, and this game absolutely positively basically blew my socks off. I had hopes that it would be better. I mean, after watching so many different forms of coverage on the game before its release, and I think I even saw the review, because I think the review came out like 24 hours or within 12 hours before release or something like that. When I saw the review, it just made me want the game even more, because everybody was praising the living hell out of it. But not only was everybody praising the living hell out of it, but just looking at it from a visual standpoint, I said to myself, I said, wow, the game looks even better than the first game. And on top of that, it looks even more fun than the first game. It makes me want to look for these Riddler trophies. It makes me want to see what the differences are between the first game and in this game, and how they've kind of grown upon that. And there certainly was. And of course, the biggest draw for me was not just the story, but it was also like, which villains would make an appearance? Which villains would I see? How many nods would there be? And the thing is, even though you weren't in Gotham City, you were like in 1/3 of Gotham City, right? You were in the 1/3 of Gotham City that was basically closed off, and they turned into a prison for the criminally insane. So basically an expansion of Arkham Asylum that was put into the city or whatnot, right? So in the form of a city that got closed down by 1/3 of Gotham City, but it was still its own thing. It was, yeah. So basically you were getting the definitive Batman experience. Even though you weren't in Gotham, you still kind of felt like you were in Gotham. You felt like you were in some of the darkest places within Gotham, and there were still plenty of colors around. You would still see some neon lights of different places and stuff like that, and plenty of nods. I mean, there would be, like, whenever you went to, you know, the Iceberg Lounge where Penguin was, you would get a feeling that you were in a different space. Whenever you went to Mr. Freeze's area, it's like, wow, you were definitely in a different space. When you know, it really just depends on where you were at the time, and there were just many different settings in the game. And again, so many nods to the comic book material and the graphic novels in terms of the characters and who would make an appearance. Thugs. And I think they also improved a little bit on the lip syncing, because that was one of the big criticisms for the first movie, so it was a little bit better this time around. Especially it was certainly improved, but you also got to play as Catwoman. You know, Robin was DLC, there was DLC as well, but ultimately the way they had Catwoman in the game was actually not disruptive to the main flow. You still were Batman, but whenever you did play as Catwoman, it was kind of a welcome change, because she was actually very addictive to play as. She actually reminds me a lot of what Spider-Man played like when I played his games back during the day of like the PlayStation 1 days or whatnot, or even during Xbox. I remember playing Spider-Man. I don't remember if it was Spider-Man the movie or just some other Spider-Man game, but I ended up playing a few of those, and I've always enjoyed the Spider-Man games. And when it came to the combat, Catwoman's gameplay kind of reminded me of Spider-Man. She's a lot faster, but she doesn't have the array of the arsenal that Batman has. Obviously, she was faster, and she had her own unique moves. And ultimately, at the end of the day, she also had her own storyline and her own sort of side missions and stuff like that to do within the game. It wasn't anywhere like it didn't take like a huge chunk out of the game. It's not like it was 25% of the game. I would say it was probably about maybe 10% of the game. 15 at most, maybe. I seriously doubt it though, because there's just so much content in this game. There's like, what, 400 or 400 plus Riddler trophies and stuff like that, and you don't just pick them up this time. There's actually puzzles you have to solve within them. Some of them simple, some of them a little bit that make you think a little bit, but none of them are like so overly complicated that you're going to be thinking like that you have to be like some sort of genius to figure them out or something like that. But it just so happens that there's a whole bunch of them that are like obvious, but you just don't see it right away. So the game kind of retains its whole easy access, but at the same time, it's not a given, right? It's like you're going to be challenged at certain points. And obviously, if you've played Arkham Asylum, especially if you played that game on hard as well, it's still recommended that you play this game on hard difficulty from the get-go, which I'm sure there were a good percentage of people that actually did that. But the way everything is presented in this game in particular really does surpass the first game, which is quite a feat in and of itself, because when you look at this game and when you go back to look at the previous game, it's like, yeah, both games look great, and especially their time, they look terrific. But when you played a game that would come out 2 years later in Arkham City, it really just, especially if you've recently played Arkham Asylum before Arkham City came out, which I'm sure a lot of people did, you were just like, wow. And the way everything, like with the way all the pieces are put together, is absolutely incredible. The music in this game is absolutely amazing, and it surpasses the first game. And it really just, like, from the moment when you start the game and when the music starts to play as you go into the main menu, guess what? Like, it's like, okay, it's on, here we go. You know what I mean? Because it's like, this is the sequel. It's like the music kind of reminds you of like, okay, you know this, you know what you're in for, and here we go, we're gonna go in all the way. And it was just some of the most epic music, some of the most epic Batman music that was ever composed and put into a game, let alone like any form of media in general. Like the score for Batman Arkham City is just absolutely incredible from start to finish, and it grabs you and you're like, wow. And then that main menu just starts you out and you set everything up, and it's like, okay, here we go. And it's just really exciting. Like when I first put the disc in and I started playing, I was like, wow, I was just like amazed. And then the game would start, and little did I know, the little scene that I would get with like that Catwoman start would be a little bit of foreshadowing for the ending. But of course, none of us knew that at the time. But and then when we saw it, it was like, oh, okay. So yeah, it was absolutely like, it was just so incredible the way Rocksteady just put all the pieces together. And let me tell you, one of the things that makes Rocksteady the studio who they are today is obviously like they're really good storytellers, and they're really good at taking a concept and literally bringing it to life. And of course, you've got all the right guys reprising the roles. Of course, you got Mark Hamill as Joker, you've got Kevin Conroy as Batman, reprising his role as well, and then you have Harley Quinn and everybody in between, some of the previous characters, and then you had a whole bunch of new characters just making it into the game, and it was incredible. And then the side missions were even bigger this time. There were more things to do, and the more you explored the world and the further you got into the game, the more the world would open up, and there would be more and more things for you to do. But with that being said, it really is, it is linear in terms of the story, but everything else in terms of when you do whatever it is that you want to do, it's pretty damn open world, which is incredible. And it was bigger than Arkham Asylum, of course, because it's in a city and you get to do a lot of stuff with some gliding and some gameplay stuff with gliding, which is great. And there are tons of enemies to take out. So if you want to do that, you can certainly do that. And of course, like I said, with the Riddler trophies, you're not just running around and picking them up anymore. There's more to it than that. Yes, you do have to take snapshots here and there, just like the first game, but nobody really complained about that, really. As a matter of fact, it's even more exciting in the second game, because in the second game, you're in 1/3 of Gotham that's been closed down. You're in this city. So it makes you actually want to look around and to see what you might find, or what callbacks there are to maybe the movies, or maybe maybe some other forms of media like the comics and stuff like that. Hardcore Batman fans were truly treated by this game. And of course, if you were a casual Batman fan or an above average Batman fan, you were certainly treated, and you were like in awe of this game, right? You didn't want to put it down, because I specifically remember having some of the longest play sessions in this game that I've ever had in my life, because of the fact that it was just, the game would grip you and it would not let go. Like when this game came out, it was on obviously like a Monday night at midnight, right? And I think at the time, I believe I ended up stopping. Let me look at I want to get the release date and make sure I got it right, because I think I wasn't at work. I think I'd stopped my martial arts career at the time, and it was at the end of 2011 when I did. It's 2011. What is the release date of this game? Come on now, Unreal Engine 3, blah blah. October 18th, and it was somewhere around that time when I stopped. And let me tell you, I absolutely just embraced Batman. And as a matter of fact, I do remember now. I remember on the car ride home, and I was talking to my friends about what I'd done. So yes, I believe I had stopped at that time, and it was just incredible because I had nothing but free time. So basically, all I did was I stood up as late as I possibly could. I played the game for as long as I possibly could, for session after session, until it was complete. And I really didn't get bored with it. If anything, I just got done from because I was holding still for too long. And that's the only thing that kind of tired me out. But other than that, the game itself, like, I wanted to keep playing it, especially like within like the first half, when everything was just so new and just not as familiar, and when you're truly engulfed in there for the first time. That is where the fun truly is, like when you're first getting into the game. So, and I like the fact that there was a lot of familiarity in the game in terms of gameplay, but that at the same time, I also knew that I had a whole bunch of new stuff to look forward to. So with this game, for a while, since I was out of work for a while, and I just kind of enjoyed, my time off and my time with the game as well, especially with this game coming out. And of course, there was also Call of Duty coming out in November, so it's like I had a shit ton of things to. It's like, okay, I've got 2 weeks to 100% this game before Call of Duty comes out, and I believe I did. But here's the thing, like, my schedule was somewhere along the lines of, wake up whenever, go to the gym, eat, sleep, whatever, make sure everything in the house is clean and all that kind of stuff, and just play the hell out of this game and do whatever the hell you want. So, and the only time when things would change is when I would hang out with friends, or whenever I would or whatever, I would have to take care of necessity and errands and stuff like that. But for the most part, that was the schedule, man, and it was great. I just completely like immersed myself, and it was just an absolute joy. I actually had this different kind of gaming chair. It's not a chair that I have now. That's a really cool office chair. No, I had this, like, the one that was really close to the floor, but it was really good. And I didn't have the setup that I had today. It just wasn't like that. I had a small flat screen TV, which was actually smaller than the monitor that I'm currently looking at, and just the Xbox 360 and and some space right there. And I would just sit there, look at the screen, and I would just enjoy myself. I'd have a beverage, and I wouldn't get up for a while. Like, if you were to, like, if you were to take some, like, a bedpan and some duct tape and put it right onto my ass, I probably wouldn't move at all while playing this game. As long as I had something to eat, of course. But yeah, you give me a bedpan, you give me some duct tape, and I would not get up for this game, because this game also just represents my favorite superhero of all time. For those of you guys that don't know, Batman is absolutely positively my favorite superhero of all time. And for me personally, this was the definitive Batman experience, and my personal favorite of the three. However, because I understand that this game would not be where it was, or as good as it was, because of Arkham Asylum, I still give the title of GOAT to Arkham Asylum, because it made this game possible. It made it possible for this game to be better, to look better, to feel better, to play better, for the story to progress in order to get to that ending that would, that would either shock you or surprise you, or elements of the story that you didn't see coming, or Batman tackling something that we wouldn't know, or maybe some twists and turns that we may have not seen coming, or whatnot, or at least not right away, right? And then at the middle of it all, you've got the fact that Hugo Strange knows who Batman is. So you're starting to wonder to yourself, you're like, how? Like, first of all, yes, you are wondering how, but then at the same time, you're like, okay, how are we gonna solve this? Because all this guy has to do is say who I am and reveal my identity to the world, and the next thing you know, it's not like Iron Man and Tony Stark. If people knew that Batman was Bruce Wayne, the results would not be the same as Iron Man's and Tony Stark's situation. So, yeah. But getting those questions answered from 1 minute to the next, or 1 hour to the next, was always great. And And I put a lot of hours into this game. I put a lot of hours into this game, and I do not regret one bit of it. It is a game that every single superhero gaming fan should embrace, as well as or should experience, as well as of course the Batman fans, right? And whichever kind of Batman fan you are, whether it's a casual Batman fan or whether it's a hardcore Batman fan that's read the graphic novels and knows so much more about Batman that your average Batman fan simply doesn't know, you would be happy with this game. You would smile from ear to ear, and you would actually want to explore the city in a way like as if you were actually there, to like look at some of the stuff that's on the walls or some of the posters that are on the walls that don't necessarily mean anything, but to see if there were any specific nods to something that was in a graphic novel or a comic book. And chances are you would be happy with what you saw. And then whenever you go into a main part of the game, to where you're supposed to go, because the story itself is linear despite the fact that the world is open, like you will absolutely just smile from ear to ear, and you will be amazed at the foundation of this game and what this game is actually offering from every single aspect. And the fact that you've got the good voice actors to support it, a dev team that has that much respect for the source material, as well as the story that they've created that set up this story here, and the kind of commitment that they have to executing it, is just an absolute recipe for success. And that is why this game is as good as it is. I mean, if like you could be, we're in the year 2023, and if somebody just happens to stumble upon this video and you're still listening as of right now, and if you have not played Batman Arkham City, like, do yourself in favor and play Batman Arkham City. Like, you don't necessarily have to play Batman Arkham Asylum first if you don't want to, even though I recommend you do. You'll get a little bit more of a full appreciation from it, especially since the story is a trilogy story. But with that being said, if you want to jump right into Arkham City from start to finish for the first time ever, you will not be disappointed with your experience. Even if you are not a Batman fan, you will find that there's a lot to appreciate with this game. And just looking at this part here, where there's dialogue between Batman, and then of course you got your different NPCs that you kind of run into. It is, it's always thrilling, and at the same time, when you go and explore the city, you will find either nods or characters that aren't a part of the main story, but they're still in this game. And for a lot of fans, that's a really big deal, because the villains, as I mentioned in my previous Batman Arkham Asylum retrospective video, is that the villains are one of the main things that make Batman the hero that he is, and why he is so. Why he's feared, why he's respected, why Batman is the superhero that he is, right? And the game does an excellent job of not only answering a lot of questions in terms of how Batman operates, but it also kind of keeps him mysterious despite all of this. Despite the fact that Batman is being revealed because you are him, there's still that mystery about the character, right? In terms of like what really makes him tick, what is it about, you're always going to have questions about the character of the Batman, right? That's one of the things that makes Batman so appealing, is because as much as you may know him or think you know him, there's always something that you don't quite understand, or something that will always be a question mark in terms of how is it that this person just with just any question you think of, really. And the villains ultimately like play an interesting role in this game because of what happens. So it really is a thrill ride. Batman Arkham City is an absolute thrill ride. And in the first game, you were trapped within an island of Arkham Asylum. And in this game, you are not as trapped, but you're within the confines of this 1/3 of Gotham City that's got all the criminals in it for the criminally insane. And there's a lot more room for you to spread your legs, or should I say spread your wings at this point, and fly around and literally do anything that your heart desires in any given moment in the game. So whether you want to go search for something in a specific building after the world opens up to you to a certain degree, you can do that. If you want to go and just spend a shit ton of time in one of your one of your game sessions to look for all those 400 trophies, you can do that. I mean, granted, you're probably not going to get through it in one session unless you were to like spend an entire day doing it, maybe. But figuring things out and how everything flows together in terms of upgrading your equipment, so that way you can unlock even more or find even more things and stuff like that. The combat being addictive as it is, the story that kind of makes you want to progress further, despite the fact that the game is an open world style game. The story makes you want to progress further because you want to know what happens next. You want to know what's going to happen in the game, and the game does a good job of throwing a few twists here and there and kind of surprising you. And from a gameplay perspective, even to this day, I'm still very impressed with a game that's like 12 years old now. I'm still very impressed at the fact that you can go and do this over here, or you can go and do that over there, or the level of detail in this specific place, or how one specific place looks like, and then you go to another place in the city and it's like, wow, this looks completely different, and it's like I'm in a completely different spot. So within Arkham City, they managed to put different flavors of all sorts of different things that are a nod to the Batman world. So when you look at it from that way, it's like there's something here for pretty much every type of Batman fan and any type of fan of this type of game. This is an open world action type of game. There's no RPG elements or anything like that. Although if they ever were to do an open world action RPG type of Batman, I don't think it would hurt the game at all. You know, it's kind of sad that Kevin Conroy would no longer voice Batman, rest his soul. But with that being said, this game gave us everything we could ever ask for when it comes to a Batman game. Everything. So, but now I want to talk about a few of the things in terms of what I've been researching when it comes to this game, because even as I do research, when I do some of these type of retrospective videos, and when I'm reading through it before I kind of get on and share that with you, it's always amazing to see and read, of course, what it takes to make a game like this and how it came to be, so to speak, right? From concept to everything else, because it's not easy making a game of this type of scale, and it takes a lot of people, it takes a lot of time, and it takes a vision too that you're constantly struggling to, or putting worth effort to put it to life. So when it comes to the development of Arkham City, right, it starts with concept. So Rocksteady conceived the idea of a sequel before development of Arkham Asylum had concluded, developing ideas of both the story and setting so the game's narratives can be effectively connected. A secret room was hidden in the Asylum Warden's office in Arkham Asylum, containing hints of how the sequel would progress, including blueprints for the Arkham City prison. The blueprints are quite similar to its final layout in Arkham City. The original idea was to take the game out of Arkham Asylum setting and onto the streets of Gotham City, while retaining the level of design detail put into the Asylum. To that end, they wanted to include locations of the Batman mythos that were notable and meaningful to the character, instead of a series of generic streets. Rocksteady was initially unsure of how technical considerations would limit the scope of this idea. Serious development of the game's story and concept started in February of 2009, as teams were moved from Arkham Asylum to Arkham City's development as they completed work on that game. By the time they had programmed Batman to glide in between buildings of the Asylum, the adaptation of the gameplay into the city was considered natural. Rocksteady decided to not include the Batmobile because it would be unable to travel in the city's broken terrain. Batman's gliding provided a sufficient means of transportation, and it was considered that putting Batman in any vehicle would make it a completely different game. Zephyrin Hill, Arkham City's director from the Rocksteady Studios, stated that the key goal for the game was to deliver the Batman in Gotham feeling. The sequel was described by Conroy as really, really dark, while relating to the game's dark nature to the animated movie Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker. Conroy also said, "It involves a lot of the villains and it goes into that area. It's that dark." So Kevin Conroy was definitely right about that. And I'm glad that they took it in that direction that they did, because again, like it said in the article, in that part of the article that I just read to you, that it was natural. But now we're going to get into the design aspect. So here we go. When it comes to design, as part of the Batman in Gotham design philosophy, Batman's arsenal of moves and actions were explained. Although the team developed several ideas for new moves, gadgets, and abilities, They only went forward with those that they felt would be authentic to Batman. They also chose to have Batman start the game with access to gadgets unlocked in Batman Arkham Asylum, to convey the impression that Batman is fully prepared for the inevitability of things going wrong with Arkham City. The studio reviewed the play and combat system used in Arkham Asylum, and built on new moves and natural extensions of the existing system as a means to add even more depth in gameplay instead of changing them fundamentally. The number of animations were doubled to reflect the larger arsenal of moves at the player's physical disposal. The X-ray like detective vision mode used to highlight certain objects in game was redeveloped for Arkham City because it was considered to be too useful in Arkham Asylum, resulting in some players using it throughout almost the entire game. The visual effect also obscured the game's design aesthetic. One idea was to introduce a time limit on its use, but it was considered that Batman wouldn't make a gadget like that. Instead, the mode was designed to be difficult to use in certain situations, such as obscuring navigational information and combat where enemy strikes would blur the screen when detective vision is active. Rocksteady and art director David Higo described the new detective vision as an augmented reality mode. Another way that developers wished to enhance the player's Batman experience was through the larger in-game world. Arkham City has a virtual footprint 5 times larger than that of Arkham Asylum, and the navigational aspects were improved to offer the player the freedom and exhilaration of gliding down alleyways and soaring above the skyline. Although the concepts were compared to an open-world game, Hill notes that such freedom nature would not be appropriate for Batman game because it would inhibit the atmosphere that they wanted to create. And Arkham City was designed to challenge the player to be like Batman and to survive. In counterbalance to a larger game world, the developers also sought to include more challenges and side missions while keeping the player alert as to the primary mission, such that players consistently are aware of the extreme pressure of the challenges that they face. The Riddler trophies were designed towards the end of the game's development and were incorporated into every area of the map without overpopulating it, resulting in 440 trophies. Rocksteady aimed to make the player think creatively while collecting trophies by requiring the use of gadgets to solve puzzles rather than placing the trophies in obscure areas of the map for mere collection items. With the open game world, Rocksteady included more villains to create challenges for Batman. Hugo Strange was selected as a primary antagonist as his power for controlling matter helped maintain the lockdown of Arkham City once Batman enters. Strange is aware of Batman's true identity, making Batman vulnerable and exposed in a way that he's never been before, according to Hill. He noted that Strange is a character new to many players, but that his backstory and character are detailed throughout the game. Catwoman was also included based on her long history with Batman, though she was given her own agenda running parallel into the events with Arkham City. Catwoman's missions initially ended with her coming to Batman's aid, but late in development, the developers decided to give her player an alternate choice, allowing them to have the morality gray Catwoman leave the city with her loot intended to move away from the traditional Boy Wonder image. Excuse me, let me say that again. Catwoman intended to leave the city with her loot. The players decided ways to give the player an alternate choice, allowing them to have the morally gray Catwoman leave the city with her loot, intended to move away from the traditional Boy Wonder image. Senior concept artist Khan Mutfik explained, "Our vision of Robin is to have one of the troubled young individual that is calm and introverted at times, but very dangerous and aggressive if provoked. The shaved head is inspired by Cage Fighter's appearance, such as the red and yellow colors of his outfit, the cage and the mask. Rocksteady originally did not plan to include Robin in the main story, but later decided that it was authentic in means of delivering new gadgets to Batman, as well as to introduce their version of the character and his relationship with Batman as well. Rocksteady intended for Batman, Catwoman, and Robin to offer 3 different playing experiences. Other villains from Batman's comic history were selected to show that the prison was a melting pot of people from Gotham. Developers believe that providing a small part of each villain's story rather than focusing on a select few allowed the player to meet many more characters and effectively conveyed the feeling of being in a super prison filled with supervillains. Rocksteady decided early on that the Joker would die in the story and developed the idea of him poisoning Batman with the same affliction in order to show how the 2 dramatically opposed characters would interact in pursuit of a shared goal. Warner Brothers and Dini did not oppose killing off the character as long as it was not done for shock value and as long as they made it clear that Batman was not at fault, since he would not intentionally kill somebody. The developers had considered adding multiplayer elements into the game, but ultimately decided against it. About the agreement, Hill stated, "If we use all of the energy that is required to create multiplayer and instead focus on the single player, would that deliver a better overall game?" Variety added that the city itself, as certain areas were designed around the villains and that control a particular territory. Dax Grin, marketing game manager at Rocksteady Games, said, "If you move into Joker's territory, you get a very Jokerized experience, and all the artwork of the buildings, whether that's graffiti, signage, or whatever it might be, gives you the dense kind of Joker experience." So our art team has really put a lot of effort into making that sort of transition between turf zone, from one turf zone to another, really helping the player feel like they're making a physical transition into another emotional space. The architecture was imbued in the 19th century Art Nouveau design, such as Strange's Wonder Tower, which was inspired by the Eiffel Tower, while character designs employed a modern hyperrealism style. To keep the environments interesting, base color schemes such as Mr. Freeze's ice-themed arena, Joker's fire-themed steel mill, and Poison Ivy's jungle-themed area were populated with contrasting elements. So for example, the steel mill uses large white clown faces to contrast with oranges and reds used throughout. To develop the expanded environment of Arkham City and build a natural urban environment for Batman, Rocksteady expanded on its workforce from 75 to over 100 people. The crunch period of Arkham City lasted for about 8 months, with people working until 11 or 12 each night, with an 8 a.m. start. Wow. That actually, like right there before we keep on moving forward with this article, that just goes to show you, like for 8 months, those guys would be putting in 15-hour days for 8 months, which is insane. These guys are eating at their desks, and I bet that there were a few days where those guys didn't even go home, because, and especially since certain parts of the game tie in with other parts of the game, so if one person couldn't go home, that meant another person couldn't go home, because they kind of have to work coincide, or they have to wait for one person to finish this before moving on to the other thing. So that is, wow, that right there, I'm glad that I read that part, because it just shows you the amount of dedication that it takes to make this. But let's go into music real quick. So the game's release was accompanied by 2 albums of music released by Water Tower Music. Batman Arkham City, the original video game score, was released on October 18th of 2011 and features 19 tracks written for the game by Arkham Asylum composers Nick Arundel and Ron Fish. Batman Arkham City, the album, was released on October 4th of 2011 via CD and digital download. The album contains 11 original songs inspired by the game from mainstream artists, including Darty, Panic and the Disco, and Coheed and Cambria. An extra song was made available via the collector's edition of the album, and the deluxe edition included a portion of Arundel's original score. So when it came to marketing, Arkham City's marketing campaign was designed to reach an audience outside of the superhero fans and appeal to consumers who are attracted to games like the first-person shooter series like Call of Duty. Warner Brothers' marketing team decided that Batman's status as a cultural icon superhero was unavoidable, so they decided to emphasize other elements of the character that would appeal to the fans of first-person shooters and action games. Black and white photographs of iconic personalities like inventor Steve Jobs and actor James Dean served as inspiration and basis for the final marketing campaign used in advertisements in the game's cover art. The imagery, highlighted with blood and bathed in light, was considered to move away from the classic superhero image and refocus on Batman's humanity. The black and white campaign was featured on 120 magazine covers and was targeted towards approximately 15 million consumers across a variety of social media and Warner Brothers products, in addition to a series of vital marketing videos and stunts involving actors in costume attending press-related events. By April of 2012, 3 gameplay trailers had gained approximately 6 million views. The viral segment of the campaign involved several audio recordings between characters of the games, including Hugo Strange, Quincy Sharp, Riddler, and the Penguin. Each recording could be found by solving a puzzle. The entire campaign would spend for more than a year in development, producing artwork, videos, DLC, printed advertisements, billboards, and events, and was estimated to have cost at least $10 million. A 6-issue limited monthly comic series, also titled Batman Arkham City, was released on May 11th of 2011. The series bridges a plot between Batman Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. It was written by Paul Dini and also by Carlos Danda. Warner Brothers also developed toys based on the characters through Mattel, Hallmark cards, and Batarang-shaped video game controllers, and variety of apparel by Converse, Echo Complex, Sea Life, New Era, and Briefly Stated. Toys R Us in Times Square in New York City released 500 copies of Batman Arkham City on Monday, October 17th, one day before the game officially hit shelves. The first 100 customers to pre-order a copy through the store's personal shopping department had a chance to get their game autographed by DC Entertainment co-publisher Jim Lee, Batman voice actor Kevin Conroy, and Arkham City game director Severin Hill. The remaining 400 copies of Arkham would be purchased at the event unautographed. Now, we're going to get into the release because I'm pretty sure that there was quite a lot of interesting things when it comes to the release. So here we go. Batman Arkham City was released in North America on October 18th of 2011 for the Xbox 360, the PlayStation 3, followed by October 19th in Australia and October 21st in Europe. Australian retailers EB Games and Game broke the official release date 2 days early, selling a game on October 17th. The Windows version had been scheduled for simultaneous release for the other versions, but in September of 2011. Its release was published back to November 18th without explanation. Alongside its PC launch, the game was also released digitally on the OnLive, Origin, and Steam platforms. The Game of the Year edition was released on May 29th of 2012 in the United States and Canada, and on September 7th of 2012 in Europe, Australia, and other territories on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. Except the United Kingdom were all scheduled for release to push back to November 2nd of 2012. A spin-off game titled Batman Arkham City Lockdown was developed by NetherRealm Studios for iOS and was released on December 7th of 2011. Taking place before Arkham City, the game sees players using touchscreen controls to fight enemies one-on-one, including villains such as Two-Face, Solomon Grundy, Joker, and mercenary Deathstroke. Defeating enemies earns points that can be used to upgrade Batman's stats and unlock gadgets for costumes. The Wii U version of Batman Arkham City was released on November 18th of 2012, alongside the console's launch in North America. Titled Batman Arkham City Armored Edition, the release contains all of the available content from previous releases, plus a battle armored tech mode, gamepad support, and other additions. The Wii U version was developed by Warner Brothers Studios in Montreal and Burbank. The Game of the Year editions was developed by OSX by Feral Interactive and released on December 13th of 2012. Batman Return to Arkham, developed by Virtuous, features remastered versions of Batman Arkham Asylum and Arkham City using the Unreal Engine 4 for the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. Additionally, both games include all previous released downloadable content and feature improved graphics, upgraded models and environments, and improvements in the lighting, effects, and shaders for both games. Originally intended for release in North America on July 26 of 2016 and in Europe on July 29th of 2016, the collection was delayed indefinitely on June 2016 to give the development team additional time to deliver a polished Batman Arkham game experience. The collection was released on October 18th of 2016. Now, we really don't need to get into retail bonuses and stuff like that, or retail editions and pre-order bonuses. I think that's pretty self-explanatory as far as downloadable content and everything like that. So let's get into something really interesting here, which I'm interested as well, and I think you guys will be too, and that is the reception. Let's get into the main details about the reception, because this game was received both critically and from the fans themselves as well, and commercially, critically and commercially, by everybody, better than Arkham Asylum was. So let's get right into the juicy details, shall we? Here we go. Batman Arkham City received critical acclaim. According to review aggregating website Metacritic, the PlayStation 3 version of the game had a weighted average review score of 96 out of 100. The Xbox 360 version had a 94 out of 100, and the PC version had a 91 out of 100. Game Informer's Andrew Renner awarded the game a perfect 10 score, labeling it the best licensed video game ever made. Renner said that the game could be the biggest and most enjoyable time sink of 2011. And concluded that the game surpassed every standard set by Batman Arkham Asylum in every way and stands tall as one of Batman's greatest moments. Joysticks Griffin McElroy praised the attention to detail, and mechanical excellence of the game environment, crediting Rocksteady for breathing life into a staggeringly beautiful world, one which excuses to encounter villains that were one-dimensional punching bags, and that the character dialogue was cliched. McElroy was also critical of the Riddler challenges, stating that they were frustrating and when the player lacks the necessary items to complete them. Eurogamer's Christian Donnellan considered that the game lacked the same surprise as its predecessor, but praised the overall improvements of bosses, animations, and the scope of activities available. Donnellan said that the game's development was intricate and very detailed, and the abilities provided for its transversal made it hard to not feel like the world's greatest detective on patrol. IGN's Greg Miller said that the voice acting, the challenges, the amazing opening, the unbelievable ending, and the feeling of being the Dark Knight, these are the things that stand out. Miller said that the Catwoman missions were a fun change of pace from the main gameplay, and that he adored the option to replay the game with unlocked abilities and more difficult enemies. Time Daily Telegraph's Tom Huggins praised the game's sense of progress in discovering and mastering the character abilities as the show-stopping brutality of the improved combat system. Huggins highlighted that Catwoman's campaign was a delight and fitting leaf into the contrast of Batman's strength, but lamented that the campaign's short length. The Guardian's Nick Cohen labeled it the best Batman game of all time, praising the variety and side missions and content, and the large cast of iconic characters and the satisfying challenges of the Riddler missions. The Australian official PlayStation magazine awarded a perfect score of 10, stating that the game is not only the best superhero game ever made, it's one of the best games ever made. It brings the Caped Crusaders world to life better than any comic, movie, or television before it. Play 3, Germany, awarded a score of 92%, calling it the best superhero game ever made. GamesMaster awarded a score of 97%, saying it's the gold standard by which all future video games should be judged. Batman Arkham City, the Armored Edition for the Wii U, received a positive reception as well. Metacritic provided a score out of an 85 out of 100. Eurogamer's Richard Leadbetter was critical of the technical performance, including issues of visual quality and inconsistent frame rate. EGM's Ray Castillo said that the optional BAT system made certain battles too easy. Carcillo said that it was clearly the inferior version of the game due to glitches and lacked on gimmicks. Nintendo World Report's Patrick Barnett wrote that certain uses of the Wii U controller made it the best way to experience Arkham City, but that some new features were a nuisance. Barnett added that it was on par, if not better visually, than its counterpart. Joystick's J.C. Fletcher opined that the persistent map screen and touchscreen interface were appreciated and complimented the use of the augmented reality to explore a crime series. Game Revolution's Blake Peterson praised the real-life management of the information. Upgrades and equipment that he considered made Batman more vulnerable, although Bennett included this as a point of criticism. For the Harley Quinn's Revenge DLC, IGN's Greg Miller scored the content 9 out of 10 and gave it an editor's choice of designation. Miller said that it was downloadable and content should be, but criticized the lack of variety of missions and the lack of conclusion of some plot threads. Eurogamer's Christian Donnellan gave the DLC score a 7 out of 10 and said that Harley Quinn worked as well as the Joker as a narrative focus. Donnellan said that Robin was enormously fun to play, but criticized the DLC for not offering anything not present in the main game. Kotaku Steven Chotillo was critical of the DLC, saying that it diminished his desire to replay the main game and describing it as a delicious dessert as a poison-filled Joker pie to the face. Totillo said it presented an emotionless, inconclusive journey composed of unused material from the main game. Okay, now this is where I'm really interested in. Here we go. Sales. When it comes to Arkham City is one of the fastest selling games in history. Worldwide, 2 million units were sold in its first week from approximately 4.6 million shipped units, compared to Arkham Asylum's 4.3 million units sold in its entire release. On February 8th of 2012, it was announced that more than 6 million units of the game had been shipped since release. During the first week of sales in the United Kingdom, Batman Arkham City became the #1 selling game on all available platforms, on all available formats, replacing FIFA 12 atop of the charts on the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and all format games. It became the fourth biggest launch of 2011 after FIFA 12 and Gears of War 3 and LA Noire. It became the biggest UK game launch in history of Warner Brothers, doubling the first week sales of Arkham Asylum. It was the 10th best-selling game of 2011 with approximately 10 weeks in release, and the 34th best-selling game of 2012. According to NPD Group, Batman Arkham City was the second best-selling game in the United States of October of 2011, selling 1.5 million copies across available platforms, the 10th best-selling in November, and the 7th best-selling overall in 2011. Game rental service GameFly announced that it was the most requested game of 2011, beating out Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. Wow. That last part, wow. So, accolades, here we go. Batman Arkham City won multiple awards at the 2011 Spike Video Game Awards, including Character of the Year, which was Joker, the Best Xbox 360 Game, Best Action Adventure Game, Best Adapted Video Game, and received nominations for Best Original Score, Best Graphics, Best Performance by Human Female, Tara Strong, Best Performance by Human Male, Mark Hamill, Trailer of the Year, Hugo Strange Reveal Trailer, Studio of the Year, which was Rocksteady, and Game of the Year. As part of the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences 2011 awards, the game was named Adventure Game of the Year and received nominations for Outstanding Achievement in Animation, Outstanding Achievement in Art Direction, Outstanding Achievement in Gameplay and Engineering, and Outstanding Achievement in Game Direction and Game of the Year. The 2012 British Academy of Film and Television, also known as BAFTA, awards saw the game win 2 awards for Performer, Mark Hamill, and Action Game, and received nominations for Artistic Achievement, Audio Achievement, Best Game Design, Original Music, Story, and Publicly Voted Game Award of 2011. Paul Crocker, Paul Dini, and Saffron Hill were nominated for the Video Game Writing Award and the Writers Guild of America, and the Crocker won the Best Video Game Script Award from the Writers Guild of Great Britain. The National Academy of Video Game Trade Reviews awarded the game of the categories Control Design and Lighting and Texturing. The game was also awarded as Outstanding Action Adventure Game by the 16th Satellite Awards. At the 2012 Development Awards, the game won the category of Use of License, and International 3D Society awarded the game in the category of 3D Video Game PC. At the 5th Annual Cody Awards, the game won the category of Best Licensed Game, and it was nominated in other categories like Game of the Year, Studio of the Year, Best Action Adventure Game, and the Best Graphics. The Daily Telegraph awarded the game the Best Original Score, Nick Arundel, and the Game of the Year with a statement that said, "As a video game, it's a magnificent piece of work, but it also shines as a unique, lovingly crafted slice of Batman's fiction." The newspaper also nominated the game for Best Director, Saffron Hill, and Best Acting Performance, Mark Hamill and Nolan North, and Best Developer, Rocksteady Studios. The game was nominated for Game of the Year and the Best Game Design at the Game Developers Choice Awards, and the Game Audio Network Guild Awards for Music of the Year, Best Soundtrack Album, and Best Audio Mix, and Best Original Vocal, Choral, and the track Main Theme. The game was named the Best Best Action Adventure Game, Best Overall Game of 2011 as part of the 2011 Yahoo Games Game of the Year Awards. Batman Arkham City received several honors from game trailers, including Best Xbox 360 Game of the Year, Best PC Game of 2011, as well as Best Action Adventure Game, and also won the Best Action Adventure Game Awards of 2012 Golden Joystick Awards, and was nominated for Top 10 Gaming Moments of Games for the game's ending. Best DLC for Harley Quinn's Revenge, and the overall Ultimate Game of the Year. It was nominated for Game of the Decade by the 2012 Spike Video Game Awards. According to Metacritic, the PlayStation 3 version of the game was the highest rated game of 2011, and across all formats, the game was tied with the role-playing game The Elder Scrolls V: Skyrim as the highest rated game of 2011, and also tied Arkham City for the 6th highest rated game ever. Batman Arkham City appeared on several lists of the top video games of 2011, including these: number 1 E! Online and CNET, number 2 by Game Sutra, number 3 by Digital Spy, Joystick, Adventure Beat, and Wired, number 5 by Associated Press and Time, and number 10 by the Daily Mirror. Several international video game websites and magazines labeled Arkham City as their favorite game of the year and as their favorite action-adventure game. GameSpot labeled it as the best action-adventure game as part of the Best of 2011 series. Game Informer informed that the best action adventure game of 2011 in their February 2012 issue and highlighted specific points of the game, including placing Batman number 1 on their list of top 10 heroes, and Mr. Freeze boss fight at number 4 on their list of top 10 video game moments. Always Game Informer labeled the game as the best action adventure game on its Best of E3 2011 awards. PlayStation Official Magazine UK placed Batman Arkham City as their number 2 game of the year. IGN labeled it as the best PC action game and the best overall action game of 2011, and the game won the IGN's People's Choice Awards for Best 360 game, Best Xbox 360 action game, and the Best Xbox 360 story. At the original Xbox Magazine Game of the Year 2011 awards, the game was awarded the Best Action Adventure Game and became runner-up for the categories for Best Story and Best Voice Acting. Die Hard Game Fan awarded the game the Best Action Game and Game of the Year. The BTVA Voice Acting Awards awarded the game in the categories of Best Male Vocal Performance in a Video Game for Mark Hamill and Best Vocal Ensemble in a Video Game. The game also won the category for Best Interaction Animation and Lucinia Awards. The game also won 2 categories of the X-Play Awards of 2011. OneUp.com placed the game's main theme song as number 6 in its top 10 theme songs of 2011. In January 2012, Eurogamer listed it as the 3rd best game of 2012. In November of 2012, Time named it as one of the greatest video games of all time and said it's hard to imagine a better superhero game than Batman Arkham City. It is also hard to imagine a better video game in general. Also in November of 2000, November Entertainment Weekly named it as one of the 10 best games of the past decade from 2002 to 2012 and said, "This is the definitive superhero action adventure of the decade." In 2013, Game Informer named it the best superhero game of all time, and Gaming Bolt listing it as number 62 of its list of the 100 greatest video games ever made. In 2014, Empire placed it at number 12 on its list of 100 greatest video games of all time, ahead of Arkham Asylum at number 28. PC Gamer named it the 68th best PC game, and IGN named it the 24th best PC game of the preceding decade, and the 16th best game of the contemporary console generation. In 2019, IGN listed it as the 54th best video game of all time. Metacritic, The Hollywood Reporter, Forbes, and IGN put the game among the best video games of the decade from 2010 to 2019. Wow. Just absolutely amazing. So as we conclude here, we're going to read this little article about Legacy. So, well, actually, technically speaking, never mind. Never mind. The Legacy is just basically talking about sequels. I thought it was something specific to specifically in terms of the kind of memories that people have, but that's a little bit different. But when it comes to Batman Arkham City, this game just achieved everything that one could possibly think of when it comes to what you would want a game to achieve, both commercially and critically, and what fans think about your game, and what the story is like, the twists and turns. And speaking of which, this cutscene right here is not only a very good looking cutscene, but of course you actually get to it basically turns the notch up a little bit in terms of what's going on, because you don't exactly know what's going on quite yet for another few seconds. And of course, as you noticed from the pieces of the article that I read, that Mark Hamill truly did steal the show when it comes to this game. Like, between every single actor that was in this movie in terms of voice acting, obviously Mark Hamill is the one that stole the show. 100% without a shadow of a doubt. Mark Hamill's performance was absolutely incredible, and back then we thought that it would be his final performance. Like, it was to be his final performance. I don't know if they probably did that just to kind of hint in terms of what would happen in the story or whatever it was, but it was very well known at the time that Mark Hamill's final performance would be in this game. So I personally, like, I was just enthralled of it all, like in terms of the story, the gameplay. Batman Arkham City is one of those games that will always feel good to play. It will always look good to play. It'll always, even if you're not playing it, every once in a while it'll make you want to go back and look at the gameplay from one of your favorite content creators, or just to look it up on YouTube and stuff and everything like that, and it will really bring you back to the time when this game first came out, and it will make you feel like it will make you remember of what it was like to play it when you played it for the first time, and how you uncovered the story bit by bit, and just how it felt from the amazing start of the game, because the game started out really well, and it kept you, it grabbed you, and it never let go. And that's the beautiful thing about the game, and it did everything better and more fun, and just, it was just absolutely incredible. And again, much thanks to Arkham Asylum for allowing it to happen at this level. So with that being said, guys, I want to pass it off, as I always do at the end of these videos. I want to pass it off to you guys. In terms of your experience with the game, whether it was playing it, watching it, hearing about it, or whatever it was, right? What is it about the game that makes it special for you? What was it about the game that stands out for you? And I don't care how simple or complicated your answer is. Whether it's because of the art design, whether it was because of the music, maybe it was all three of those things, maybe it was because you enjoyed voice acting and Mark Hamill's performance, whatever it was, whatever it is, or whether it's a multitude of things, I want to know down below, what was it for Arkham City that made it special for you? And my answer, which was, I believe, already included to a certain degree, and especially in the beginning of this commentary, is that Batman Arkham City just literally put me in Batman's world, and I enjoyed the living heck out of it. I was literally transported from, like, I was literally put into that world. It's a journey, right? Ultimately, at the end of the day, these developers, when they make these games, they want to take you on a journey, right? And very few developers manage to succeed on taking you on that journey the way that it's intended to that extent. And with Batman Arkham City, they absolutely succeeded in taking the player on that journey. And it didn't matter what kind of player you were, or what kind of video games you enjoyed playing specifically. When you played this game, you were on that journey, and you enjoyed that journey, and you understood the feeling behind it, the immersion behind it. You were there, you were dialed in. I have not heard from any person whatsoever, as far as I know of people that have played this game, I have not heard anybody say something like really bad about this game, and for good reason, because everything that was put into the game was put in with a lot of heart and a lot of effort. And as you can tell, as you can, and I'll remind you of what I read earlier, is that for 8 months straight, these guys were putting in 15-hour work days. That is not easy. It really isn't. And the closer you get to crunch time, the more challenging it becomes. So these guys would only like have a break for an hour to themselves, and then they would have to go to bed and rinse and repeat, if that. So basically their studio was their home at this point to develop this game and to release it at the time that it released. And every single award that they've gotten, and every single accolade and praise from the fans and all these other forms of media, is absolutely deserved. So if you've never played Batman Arkham City, I highly recommend you pick it up. It's especially now on Steam and everything, it's fairly cheap. If you just were always curious about the game and just never played it, do yourself a favor, and I do guarantee you this, it still holds up to this day. And obviously the remastered versions of these games came out more recently, but it still holds up to this day, and this game has certainly aged like a damn fine wine. And if you are a fan of these types of games, or if you've been curious, you deserve to treat yourself. You owe it to yourself to treat yourself to play this game, because to this day it still hits hard, it still plays well, it still looks good, and it still retains that that value of time invested into the game. I cannot stress that enough. I highly recommend you give it a shot. And if it looks fun to watch, and if it looks enticing to watch, and if it makes you want to play it just by watching it or wonder about it, then chances are you're going to enjoy playing it even more. So I highly recommend you pick it up in case you haven't. And everything that you've heard about people saying all the positive things about this game, I can assure you it is 100% deserved and 100% true, because this game is absolutely, the hype is real, and it absolutely deserves all the accolades that it has been given, because it truly has earned it, and it worked hard for it, and it certainly succeeded. So with that being said, I hope to hear some comments down in the comment section below from you guys. As always, it's always interesting to hear your perspectives and your personal experiences with the game, because it really is one of the greatest superhero video games ever made. It is a GOAT, and it is absolutely a fantastic accomplishment. So with that being said, thank you very much for listening and or watching, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.